How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to how to make a custom map for your tabletop role-playing game. My name is Lee, the DM of the new D&D podcast or live stream show, Behold This Crit, and today we're going to go over how to make a custom map, part 2. Now, you may have noticed on your screen right now, we see a basic map. And that's because this is actually part 2. If you want to see part 1 or you haven't watched it yet, go to the description below. There is a link to that video and then come back and watch this one. But if you've already watched that, let's jump right on into the content. Now, today's video is going to focus specifically around making this look more like natural land. Obviously, it looks more like an old-timey map as of right now, but there's no rivers, there's no ponds, there's no trees, mountains, anything like that, and we're going to focus on that today. So, the first thing we actually have to do is install a brush set to make our jobs infinitely easier. So, I'm going to go ahead, put some links in the description for some brush sets that I found and I use on my maps, so you can download them and I'll show you how to install them through this actual video. Also, a huge shout out to the people that made these brush sets. They make our jobs infinitely easier and save so much of our time. But either way, if you downloaded all of those brush sets in the description below, as well as gave a thumbs up for all of those people that made that awesome artwork, we're ready to install the brush sets and put them into GIMP. So, first things first, we're going to need to locate our GIMP folder. If you, for some reason, install the GIMP in a different location than its usual default location, I will show you how to do that. First of all you have to do is simply search for GIMP, and you can find the application. If you don't have it there, and you right-click Open File Location, it may show up in Programs under the Start menu, and that's okay, we can still find it manually. What we're going to want to do is I'm going to put in the description below the actual file location that will default be located. If it's not there, try this location. You can go to this PC in your file explorer, hit local drive, which is going to be your C drive, go to your users folder, click on your name, and then app data. If for some reason you don't see app data, you have to enable hidden folders. So you go to the view tab up here, make sure the hidden folders option is checked. If it's unchecked, you'll notice that it's gone. If I recheck it, it is right back there. So make sure this is checked or you're not going to find it. Now, I will give you a word of warning. Hidden items are generally hidden because they have files in them that do pertain to the operating system that you're running on. So just be careful and only click the things I'm telling you to click, just so you don't accidentally mess up your PC. But go ahead and open up app data, go to the roaming files, then find GIMP within here. You should see GIMP under alphabetical, and there it is. Open that up. You'll see the version of GIMP that you're running. Open that up. And then you should see all of this stuff, and you'll see brushes. We're just going to go ahead and open up brushes, and that's all we got to do for now. Alright, so from here, once we've downloaded our brush sets, all we got to do is move them right into our brush folder within the GIMP files. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to move this over here so we can see exactly what we're doing. Put my downloads folder over here. And I have all of the brushes I installed here. Open that up, and then I'll just go through, take my AVR file, copy that, paste it. Same thing with the other file, copy that, paste it, and do all of that stuff. And once I finish that, I have to make sure I close out a GIMP entirely and then reopen it, and once I do that, it should show up in my brush sets. Okay, cool. So once we've done that with the brush sets, we should have them all technically installed. So just to verify, you got to reset your GIMP, so close it out and reopen it, and then we're going to go over to the brush tool up in the top left corner, choose the brush icon over here, click on it, and you should see a bunch of different brush options. For example, I have a mountain here. That's what it would look like. I have a little settlement or a town icon there, whatever that is. I can scroll down. I see a little like armament kind of deal. I have some trees and all these other brushes I can use to really add to this map. And just to verify, once those are good to go, we can start building this out. Also, to clarify, the first thing we're going to do before we actually add rivers is add mountains, because arguably the most important thing whenever you're making a map is to make it look realistic, and I actually still struggle with this, how rivers actually work. Water flows down from the highest point to the lowest point, and you can't really know that unless you have mountains in your world. So we're going to start with that, and then we can figure out how to move the mountains or how to move the water around it. So first things first, we're going to go to our brushes here. Choose a mountain and just start building. But that isn't really going to be easy because I don't want to go every individual mountain like that. It's going to take so much time. Lucky for us, one of the brush sets that we installed actually has mountain ranges. So if you scroll down far enough, you will eventually find a brush like these ones right here. And it's going to be hard to see in the video, but if you click on it, you can actually see it makes a range of mountains. Now, if that does not save you time, I don't know what will. It makes it look realistic. It adjusts the sizes of the mountains to make it look really good and flow well. And then from here, once we fill this out, we kind of just add them in there, make it look all nice and good, and go. But before we actually do that, I did forget, we want to make a new layer, because since we're adding another layer on top of this, we want to make the mountains separate so we can easily erase or move them whenever we need to. So I'm going to go ahead, create a new layer here with this new layer button in the bottom right hand corner. And we're going to call this the mountains layer. And then from here, we're just going to go ahead and add mountains. I'm going to add some of this here, add some other stuff here, and I'm just going to build this out and see what it looks like when I'm done. All right, cool. I think that looks pretty good. So what I did was I essentially took all of these different mountain ranges, and I'll just come over here. I took a bunch of these guys, just kind of lined them up, and I used those as kind of a base plate. And then from those, I took a bunch of these smaller mountains, individualized mountains, like this, maybe a hill, or this smaller like mountain from here, let's see, like this guy, and use these bits to fill in the differences between the two ranges, so it makes it look more fluid and not so much like a repetition of a pattern. Now we're gonna do the same exact thing with trees, and we're just gonna, instead of using the mountain range template, there's a same exact thing for tree templates. And you'll see here, somewhere near the mountain templates, there's a bunch of evergreen trees you can use. There's also a bunch of just straight up oak trees you can use. And then we're just gonna build it out from there. So I feel like maybe we'll put a, forest here and then go from that. And we're just gonna build that out. Same thing. Awesome. Okay, so not bad. Let's zoom out a little bit. Cool. So that's what we did with all the trees. Obviously, you can see I didn't spend a whole lot of time making it look great. There's some repetition kind of stuff down here. But the more time you spend on it, the more realistic you can make it look. I can add more in here to make it look a little bit more better, or a little bit more realistic. So it's not just a repetition of a pattern. Same thing down here. If I wanted to, I could just make it a little bit bigger here, swap over the trees. But you get the idea of how I'm going about this, right? And from there, that's all it really comes down to for trees. With that out of the way, I was thinking about moving settlements next, but realistically speaking, settlements kind of deal, or they kind of settle based upon the water or the rivers on the surrounding area. So what we should do now is kind of focus on the rivers and the water, how we're going to work with that on the map. So we're going to go ahead and figure out how water works, which is by far the most confusing part of how to make an actual realistic map. All right, so how we're going to do rivers and water features in the map is we're actually going to go ahead, click on our map background, and we're going to go over to our eraser tool. Now, the eraser tool is very important because we're going to be erasing sections on our map background, which is the important piece. Make sure you're on the background color, not the outline color. But once you choose the background color, you go over to your eraser, choose the hardness level, and make sure it is hardness level 100 and not 75 or 50 or lower than that. If you choose something lower, you're going to get this feathered look, and you don't want the feathered look for a map. You want it to look crisp and clean and sharp. So you want to make sure it is the 100 level. Then you're going to adjust the size of the brush to probably about 10 for this version of a map. So I think that's probably the good size for it. It may be different for you depending upon how big you made your map. Go with your best instinct. And then the last bit we're going to do is we're going to turn on smooth stroke. Now, smooth stroke is something that makes your strokes smoother, which makes nice curved lines, whereas if you don't have it on, I'll make an S. That's without smooth stroke. If I turn it on, that's with smooth stroke. You see the kind of jitters that happen in my natural one, whereas this is more crisp and sharp. All you want to do is turn the quality up to 100, turn the weight up to 1000. This may vary depending upon the version of GIMP you're using. I'm not entirely sure, I'm sorry, but it does make your strokes look a lot smoother than they would if it was just natural hand. And once you get all that set up, you can verify that you've got everything proper, the correct size, the brush hardness, you're on the right layer, and then we're just going to go ahead and erase. Now, remember, like I said, water flows from the highest altitude down to the lowest altitude, and pretty much we just got to figure it out. It's trial and error. I am not a geographer. I don't claim to know anything about how maps truly work, but I read somewhere on Reddit, I think, that it does that, so we're going to go with it. Either way, with that being said, the mountains are obviously the highest altitude. And then what I was thinking was down here, this could be like a marshland where there's a lot of water, puddles, and this is probably going to be the lowest altitude comparatively on this side of the continent. So I'm going to go ahead, start this river somewhere up here, and just drag it and make a river and go through down, and you know, it's probably going to work its way around here and maybe out back to the ocean. Now don't worry if it doesn't look perfect, because obviously this is not an ideal river. We can just undo it, do the same thing. We'll go right out here again and just drag it down, maybe less of a curve, and just go right on into that. Great, and that's all we needed to do. Now, like I said, it's not perfect. That's okay. You have some mountains here. You have some trees there. We'll fix that later. But what we're just going to do is make a baseline of what the rivers are going to look like, and then we'll fix it afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and make some rivers, and we'll see what we come up with. Okay, now that we've got all those rivers set out like this, well, actually, before I do that, what I did here was when I had the river split, I essentially came back in with the eraser and actually just kind of turned on the smooth stroke and narrowed it out a little bit and made it look more rounded, just so you can see that the river in fact does flow downwards. So if it's going this way, the river is naturally going to erode this section of the split of the river, so it kind of erodes that. Same thing with this one, and that way it makes the rivers more realistic and not just kind of like T-joints where they're like right angles where they're actually breaking off. But either way, you're going to be left with something that looks like this, where you have the black outline of the river. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and take our selection tool, our select by color tool, which looks like this. We're going to click on our map outline here, and we're going to click on here and click inside one of our rivers that we've created. From there, we're going to go ahead and hit select, shrink by 2. Again, this may vary depending upon what you have set for your size of the map. And then you're going to go one more time into select, feather, and have that set to 2 as well, and hit OK. Then once that selection is made, you're going to click on the outline and hit delete. And now you've got a really nice outlined river set for all of your rivers here on your map. Now obviously we still have the mountains and everything in the way, but we can go ahead and do that as well. If we go keep that selection, hit undo, and instead of doing anything else, click on the mountains, hit delete, and click on the trees and hit delete. And now it got rid of everything within that selection, and you are all set, and now you have a very nice looking river set. And obviously we have little joints like this that don't really map out perfectly, and that's okay. You can always go back in with the eraser, you know, and erase some of these mountains to make it look more realistic, so that way you don't have it cutting through literal mountains. You know, that way, here we go, look at some of that, and just get rid of some of these cuts here so it looks like it's not just jacking through some of these mountaintops here. And that's really all you got to do to make rivers. But with that out of the way, this is where we're going to get into the settlements part. And like I said a little bit earlier, settlements are generally settled around masses of water. Obviously trade, boats, that's how that works, as well as just drinking water and power, generally speaking. So we're going to go right back on in, make a new layer. We're going to call this one settlements. We'll move that to the top. Choose our little pencil icon, but we're going to make it a paintbrush. And we're going to choose our brush for our settlements. Now, you can choose any one of these plethora of different settlements you can choose from. There's so many of them. I generally like this guy. You can change them depending upon how big it is. This is city number 5. There's city number 4, number 3, number 2. But we'll use these ones for now. And then you just pick and choose places on your map that look good. So realistically speaking, there's obviously going to be some sort of port city, right? And that port city is probably going to be in the central area between everywhere. So this area over here on the left is probably the most likely area for this city to be, seeming as how it has easy access to the southern hemisphere as well as the northern hemisphere islands. So we'll go ahead, pop one of our cities over here, and we'll make this probably about maybe 175 size. And there it is. And then we just fill out what works for us and what makes sense. And I'll just go through it and fill it out and see what I get. And there we go. I just threw some cities on there and it's looking good. Now, I did use the same city pen for pretty much every city here because I'm just using this for an example's sake. But, I mean, honestly, it still looks pretty good, realistically speaking. If we're just going to go around, we got settlement here, 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 and all these other things that you can easily see. Now, if you have a section like this where you have a settlement within a bunch of vegetation and stuff, and it's kind of hard to see because it's so dark around it, well, what you can do is you can actually take the tree or the mountain template that we have here and lower the opacity. And if we change the opacity of the mountains, we'll just lower it a little bit, so that way they're not so overpowering. So it's about 80% here. And same thing with the trees. If we make the trees about 80%, it'll help everything else stick out on the map. So that way we can see, okay, there's settlements here. Also, you can just choose the settlements and duplicate it by clicking on this duplicate button down here. It will duplicate that and make it a little bit darker. And that way they stand out a bit more on your map. And that looks like it's it for part 2, everybody. We've added mountains, trees, rivers, settlements. Next in the video, or at least in part 3, we're going to add some depth to make it look like it's actually depth, where you can see the ocean and the lines on the river to make it look like they're more deep, to kind of give it some background on the actual ocean front. We're going to add some text modifiers to it to give names to each of these settlements. And then we're going to add a title page and our different elements to make it look more like an old-timey map. And that's pretty much what we got. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed and learned something. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to post a comment and ask. I generally look at this channel every single day. So any questions you have, pop them in the chat or ask me on Twitter, and I'll be happy to answer them. Either way, thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to check us out live every Friday at 7 p.m. EST for Behold This Crit Live, where we go over all of our D&D campaign. I think we're on episode 40 by now, but hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you all very much for watching again, and we'll see you all next time.